Hello, my name is Erin Peña, and I've been beading for about 20 years. In 2025, I was awarded a grant by the Minnesota State Arts Board to make this series of video tutorials covering the basics of the kind of geometric beading I do. I have a separate video covering the tools and materials I use, but briefly, I use Miyuki Delica beads, size 11, and Fireline thread, a 4-pound. So this video is a bit different because we're not really going to make something. I'm going to have 4 separate videos, 5 including this one, eventually, where we'll go step by step through a pattern and a word graph of the 4 shapes that we've learned so far. But first, I'm going to here give a bit of an overview on how to read patterns, like some basic legends, like a map legend or a key, that sort of information. So the first thing I want to say is that I learned how to read both word and pattern graphs for peyote stitch from this book by Julia Prettle, Little Bead Boxes. It's still available, I believe, through her website, which I will have linked in the show notes. And also, all of the blank graphs that I use came from Julia Prettle's website as a free download. The patterns are my own, but the blanks come from her. So when it comes to peyote stitch patterns, there are 2 more common ways that I'm aware of for writing patterns. What you see on the screen right now is basically both a picture and a word representation of the same sequence of beads. I've learned how to read both, at least in the beginning, but over time I have gravitated towards the pictures and away from the written graphs. It's just a personal preference, but for this video series, we'll look at both. This is what my color keys look like without the scribbles. The color keys are all for Miyuki Delicas, as I said, size 11. You could substitute any other cylinder bead that you like. Aiko's Treasures, for instance. I would recommend using all the same brand and all the same size, otherwise you're going to probably get a lumpy and uneven project at the end. I have provided colors for people who like to have very specific notes about things like that, but feel free to substitute your own colors, whatever you have, whatever you prefer. Maybe you don't like purple pansies, maybe you'd rather do red geraniums or something, blue roses, I don't know. I've been switching colors and patterns since I very first started to do this. I'm pretty sure even like the very first of the little bead boxes I made, I changed the colors. So do what you want to do to make yourself happy. That's what this is all about. So the picture graphs are fairly self-explanatory. Each one of those colored cells represents an individual bead. The difficulty with reading peyote stitch graphs can be that peyote stitch is worked in a sort of a zigzag. You can see around the edge you have some beads sticking up, some sticking down. But as we do these tutorial videos, I'll be showing you graphs that progress in size, 1 row at a time, as we go along. So hopefully you can get a better image of how peyote stitch grows as it's worked and what that looks like. One little thing about picture graphs, or at least the ones that I'm using, is that, like I said, I got these from Julia Prettle, and she has a habit of placing those little white circles in the beads that are increase beads, or are corner beads as she calls them. I've kept that habit in case it turns out to be useful. So word graphs take a bit more explanation. This is a word graph representation of the exact same flower graph that we were just looking at. The first thing you can see is that I've assigned every color in the color key its own letter. Some beaders like to When they have their beads laid out on their mats, their beading mats, they'll like to place a letter next to each little pile of beads to indicate, which color it is. I've even seen some beaders use like those letter beads that you can make friendship bracelets out of. I've seen those used. Whatever's easiest. So when we write word graphs, we go row by row, one row at a time. There's 13 total rows in this graph. And our first row, you can see here, is 3A beads. That represents the beginning circle of 3 beads tied at a knot. For a triangle, that's 3 beads. If it was a hexagon, it'd be 6, pentagon, 5, so on. When we say one row, what we mean is one journey of the needle around the entire rim of the piece. So for a triangle, you would have gone around all 3 sides. For a square, all 4 sides, etc. One complete circuit around. I bead clockwise, so I've written all the graphs to go in a clockwise direction. If a piece is symmetrical, it doesn't make much difference. This piece, for instance, whether you beaded clockwise or counterclockwise, it would still look exactly the same at the end of it. Asymmetry makes more of a difference, but for this one, it doesn't matter. There's another helpful piece of shorthand we can use when we're working with symmetrical pieces, and that is this x3 or times 3 that you see in parentheses after almost all of these rows. And that means we repeat the sequence of that row 3 times. So for row 4, it's CC 2A 3 times. 3 times, 3 sides on a triangle. Every side of that triangle looks the same. If it was a symmetrical hexagon, then it would say times 6. And all 6 sides of that hexagon would look the same. Those bolded letters at the beginning indicate corner beads or increase beads. With a triangle, it's going to be 2 beads in the corner for pretty much every row until you're ready to stop. So we have here BB, BB, CC, DD, DD, etc., etc. And at the end there, we have an NC that stands for no corner. When we're looking at the sides of the beadwork, there's another piece of shorthand we can use, which is to use numbers to indicate placing the same color of bead in sequence. So like this underlined row here, row 8, after the corner, it's D, C, 2B, C, D. So that means we would place 1D, 1C, 2 Bs, 1C, 1D. Which is not to say placing 2 Bs as we place 2 Ds in the corner of that same row, but which is to say 1B, 1B, right? 2 Bs in sequence. Which is why it's written differently than we write the corners, where we use one letter for each bead to indicate that they're getting placed at the same time. I hope that makes sense. I promise we are going to do this actually in our upcoming tutorial videos. When a piece isn't symmetrical, things can get a bit messy because we can no longer use our trick of parentheses times 3, 4, however many. We have to write every side for the whole row out. In this example, the square pattern that I've made is asymmetric to give us practice with that. And the example here, we're at row 18. Every side of this row is different, as with most of the rows in this pattern. So every single side is written out within the line for this row. So row 18 contains instructions for 4 individual sides. So starting in the beginning, the word graph starts up at the top left. That's just my habit. Start in the top left. And this first GGG bolded indicates that first corner there that's circled. Moving on down the side, we get then to the second corner, JJJ, continuing on to the next GGG for the third corner, and then JJJ, the fourth corner. There's one other tricky thing about word graphs, which is that as you progress through the beadwork and you step up from row to row, your starting point is most likely going to change. With a triangle, it will stay the same until you stop increasing. You hit that 1 bead in the corner, then no beads in the corner. As you can see here, I've drawn this red line with the dots to indicate the beads that you'll come out of for every row. As you can see, the triangle stays stable. But once we get to different shapes with varying increased cycles, like the hexagon, it'll start to change. And so your place in the word graph is going to change, as indicated by the red circles here. And with a pentagon, same thing. With a longer pattern, you can get a better idea of that sense of motion, of your starting point moving up by 1 through the pattern. I think that's why, even if you do prefer to use word graphs, it's not a bad idea to do that in tandem with picture graphs, just as a means of orienting yourself, if nothing else. I might be projecting. That just might be my preference. But it might be useful. So that's all I had for this introduction. Our next videos, I should probably stop making promises about which video will come next. The truth of the matter is I just want to do them all at once. Most likely, if you're seeing this video up on YouTube, then I'll have at least 1 or 2 more on the way or up as well. That's the plan. I don't really want to stagger it. It seems unfair to give you this tutorial and then not give you something to practice on. I'll be seeing you next time. Links to Julia Predel's website will be in the show description, and I will say this at the beginning of the other videos as well, but I'm planning to host all of these patterns, words, and pictures as free downloads on my Patreon, links to which are already on my channel. I think that'll be easiest to just have it available that way. So yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye.